I do have Andres.
Hello, hello. How are
So,
you?
so we're going to be like kind of co-screening here. So he's my co-founder at Navigate. I brought him on today because he and I have pretty differing views on how to handle Facebook. And so I thought it would be fun. He hasn't seen the presentation, but I've given him full authority to jump in and and just like if I say and I think this is important across this whole thing, right? Remember, guys, that like I'm one perspective, and while I am, obviously the most authoritative perspective and the most knowledgeable, that there's lots of other ways to do things, and there's not like a really like any kind of disrespect for me. One of the big things I'm big on is everything needs to be tested, right? So even when I'm saying, hey, this is the right thing to do, you still want to test it. So we're just chatting real quick until we start at 35. So I've got Andres here to kind of calm me out, and I think once we're going to spend a lot of time. Well, I'm hoping a lot of time. I'll try not to talk too much in the beginning, but we're going to spend some time in the interface. And I think it'll be a good chance for you guys to see how two people approach a Facebook campaign, because there's so many ways to do it. When we did Google last week, Google's a little bit more straightforward. You're reaching people who have an intent to buy what you're selling, typically, if you're looking at a search campaign. So they're already searching for the words that you're targeting, and it's a very direct sale. Facebook, I still like the direct sale model. I still think that there is I didn't, I should include it in the slide, but in this deck, but I didn't. Actually, maybe I should copy and paste it. Well, I still like the dating model, the Match.com versus Tinder versus whatever, because I do think you want to think about what you haven't heard that analogy,
I haven't
but it's
actually.
too late.
I
I'm
have
not
no
going to.
idea where you're going with
I'm not
this.
gonna. It's too late. I can't go back. Um, so I still like the idea that sometimes you're going to go for a direct sale. You're going to go for the close right away. That's the Tinder
Sure.
method. Here's what I have to offer. Here's what I'm looking for. Are you interested or not? And then there's like the Match.com, where you want to kind of
Right.
ease into
Yeah.
it. And that's more of like the funnel. And Andres is a lot better at that than I am. I am very much about the Tinder method in advertising. Um, so I think he'll provide a good perspective,
Yep.
and it'll give you guys a chance to see that there's lots of different ways to do this. There's not one right way. Just because Pedro said this is what he does, it has to be done this way. That's not at all the case. And I think for Facebook, because there's so many options, you've got to really think outside the box. You've got to be able um, to be open to trying different things. I mean, I got very deep into Facebook in 2008. And that was a great time to be in Facebook, because the competition was very low, and the cost per click was very low, and you could drive a lot of high profit sales back then. But a lot has changed in the last 12 years, and sometimes my old brain gets stuck in its old ways. So we'll get started. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, perfect. So welcome to week 5. Maybe I'll minimize some of this stuff. Okay. That's as good as it's gonna get, guys. So welcome to week 5. This is Facebook and Instagram. This is by far, I think, the most questions we got last time, in terms of like, hey, can you dive deeper into this? So I want to give Facebook its time, although we've only got 8 weeks, and we have to hit on everything. And I think the whole strategy behind it is really important. But I'll try to linger a little bit in Facebook this week. And definitely, guys, if you have questions, Alyssa will keep track of the chat. I think I can see when people put something in the QA. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in there. And tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. Tell me to speed up if I'm going too slow. All that good stuff. Let's jump in. So Facebook makes it really simple to boost posts. but often we're not sure if the money we spend is driving any value. Generally, it's not. Boosted posts usually don't work, but we'll get into that. And what I want to focus on here is like, what are the basics of running successful ads on Facebook and Instagram? I'm not going to focus too much on the tracking and targeting, but probably on the workshop day, we'll look at the Facebook pixel specifically and how you use that to set up different objectives. And then in the workshop, which I guess this week is tomorrow, I think we have 2 or 3 people that we're going to look at their campaigns. If they have campaigns, we'll analyze them. If they don't have campaigns, we'll create them, and we'll get a sense of how it feels to be in the platform. On the tech, so I got to reuse a lot of the slides from last week, by the way. So, you know, good for me. It saved me some time. Bad for you. I guess it's a little boring. But the thing is, it's so similar between Google Ads and Facebook. It's very similar. So again, I'm not going to focus on the technical side of this. Facebook has a platform called Facebook Blueprint. It's free. You can take all these courses. The certification costs money, whereas Google Ads Certified don't cost money. To do a Facebook Blueprint test is like $150, and it's moderated. So somebody's watching you on your webcam to make sure you're not cheating. I don't know why they take it so seriously, but they do. But anyway, all the learning stuff is free. You just can't take the class. Like, you just can't take the test and get certified without getting paid. I mean, without paying for it. So I recommend that you jump in on the technical side on Facebook Blueprint. What we're going to talk about today is the strategic side. I've only got an hour, so it's like, you know, I'll try to drop a few tips of what we do and how we think about campaigns to ensure that they're successful. This takes a really long time. This is, you know, why I get paid the big bucks, and Andres gets paid also the big bucks, but smaller bucks than me.
Much smaller bucks.
Not small. That's not true. It's not true, guys. He does not get paid much smaller bucks. Okay, so last week, if you remember, the big thing was pay per click or pay per action. Is really simple, you know, in Google. I think, you know, once you have enough data to do a pay per action, you always want to run a pay per action campaign. But until you have enough data, you run a pay per click campaign, and that's the end of the story for Google. For Facebook, you could pay per click, you could pay per engagement, you could pay per action, you could pay per lead, and all of these are valuable depending on who the persona is, what stage of the funnel you're in, what product you're selling. So it's a lot more complicated, it's a lot more messy, and it's a lot harder to get right straight out of the gate. When you're creating a campaign, and if you remember last week, I had like all Google's recommended options, and then they have one that's like at the end that's just like start from scratch. On Facebook, I really think you do have to dive into these. You need to actually create a few of these campaigns. You don't necessarily need to let them run, but if you're first getting into it, or even if you've been doing it for a while, I'll get in here after doing this for 15 years, and I'll see a new, you know, Facebook changes, I would say every 2 weeks, probably they change this interface. You've got to test them out. You've got to see what options open up, because based on what you choose here, it opens up different options as you're going through. So
another thing here is, obviously this is kind of laid out like this, but if you kind of flip it on its side, it's very much similar to a funnel. And you'll kind of see me talk a lot today about funnel building. Obviously, when you're running a campaign for brand awareness or reach, it's more at the top of the funnel. If you're then wanting people to go to your website, engage with your content, or watch your video entirely, then that would be kind of more of the middle of the funnel. And then at the conversion side of it, it's okay, you want people to convert, whether that's purchasing something or giving you their information, or, you know, visiting your actual store. That would be more kind of towards the bottom of the funnel. So really think about your campaign, what the purpose of this campaign is going to be, and then match it at what stage of the funnel that's at.
Yeah, and he's very much about funnels. When funnels and we'll talk a lot about funnels and building audiences and retargeting those audiences and then getting the sale. Usually when I create a campaign, especially in the beginning, I'm looking for like a direct sale. And the problem with Facebook is that you don't have people looking to buy what you're selling, right? In Google, if you sell t-shirts, like we talked about last week, people do go to Google and they search for t-shirts, and you know they're looking for what you have to sell. In Facebook, you've got to be a little more clever about it and try to think, okay, who might be interested in buying a t-shirt if they see the right ad for it, right? So the way Andres approaches it, and I do too sometimes, is let's create a piece of content, maybe a video or something like that, that if they watch that video, it's indicative that they're interested in perhaps buying this thing, right? And The reason that works is because it's a lot easier and a lot less expensive to get video views. And so you run perhaps like a video views campaign or maybe a brand awareness campaign.
I usually stay away from the brand awareness and kind of the reach.
Okay.
The other way to kind of think
Why do you stay away from these two?
Because the way that you have to think about these objectives is on the other side of it, right? If we're putting in there that we want our objective to be engagement, on the other side of that is Facebook's going to show that ad to people that are going to be most likely engaged with it, whether that means like, comment, or share. So like, for example, I like to use this example. It's like, I never like, comment, or share on anything on Facebook. I check Facebook regularly, but I never do that. My mom, on the other hand, reshares 10 different things that she sees every day. She'll comment and engage with everything, and she's recommending different things to people kind of all the time. So if that is what you want, if you want to build some social proof around your ad first, so you want people to see your ad and it's like, oh, it's got 100 comments, it's got 250 likes, it's got 50 shares or something like that, then think about that on your side. But at the brand awareness and at the reach objective, there's really nothing on the other side. All it is just it's showing them the ad because you want some brand awareness, or it's showing the ad to the most amount of people because you want reach, but you're really not getting anything out of that other than eyeballs. And I'm not going to pay for eyeballs. Like, I want to pay for obviously eyeballs that have something else to it, whether that's visiting my website, commenting on my post, watching my video entirely, filling out my lead gen form, or sending me a message. I usually want to get a little bit more bang for my buck. Now, if you've got a giant budget and you've got millions of dollars to spend and you literally have to hit everybody in the US for whatever reason, you're a national, company, the brand awareness and reach makes sense because you're already paying for eyeballs. Every time that you sponsor some event, that you have a banner at the back of the event, you're just like, all right, I just want people to see my stuff. So again, I think it has to do with the type of ads that I run are obviously results driven. And to get into that, you want to be in the consideration or in the conversion phase of it.
Yeah, one thing that Facebook is very good at is knowing a lot about people. So Facebook has categorized probably Andres as someone who does not engage.
Yeah.
So if you pick an engagement campaign, or if he may be someone who watches videos or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I do. Like, my feed is littered with videos, and my wife's feed does not have a single video on the entire
I don't have any videos on my feed. So he would be, so if you choose video views, it would target him within all of the other demographics and interests that we set. So Facebook knows who's more likely. And actually, one of the things we talked about very briefly in the last bootcamp was Facebook has a designation for, engaged shoppers?
Yeah.
So again, just like they can categorize people as video viewers or people who engage or people who share, they have a categorization for people who are engaged shoppers. So that's usually what I end up using because, again, I generally try to get that direct sale as quickly as possible. But sometimes when it's a new product category or something like that, you're not going to get that direct sale right away, and you need to sort of massage those users a little bit.
And another thing as to why it's, Pedro kind of mentioned how this changes all the time. Engaged shoppers used to mean somebody who bought or purchased a product like in the past 14 days. That actually changed to somebody who clicked on the shop now button on an ad. So again, it just goes to show how sometimes Facebook does a change on their side because they're trying to, limit some privacy concerns, but it really kind of hurts the marketers on our side. And if you're not on top of that, you're going to miss out something as crucial as just those two targeting abilities.
Yeah. Last thing I'm going to say here, again, if you want to, being able to run conversion-based campaigns can be really powerful. But again, if you don't have the data in the system on your conversions, then Facebook doesn't know who those people are. So it really limits their ability to drive conversions, but it will, perhaps target the people who are more likely to click on buy now. Video views is a way to kind of get engagement ahead of time and build your audience and then retarget that audience based on engagement. I usually pick, when I start, a traffic campaign or a conversion campaign. So that's kind of how we do things a little bit differently. He would pick, maybe he would have a top of funnel with video views and engagement. I would have a direct sale with traffic or conversion. And you have to pick something. But again, I recommend each one of these has different options available underneath. And I'd recommend you kind of play with it or go through Facebook Blueprint and kind of see, how they define it. This was another slide I got to use. I got to kind of reuse because again, easy is not equal to better. This boost post is probably the smartest thing that Facebook ever did. The amount of money they make on there from like business owners that see it and they're like, oh, it's just going to cost me 15 bucks, right? Let me just hit this. It's 15 bucks. I don't really care what happens. They must get millions and millions and millions of people paying them 15 bucks with just no intention of ever following up on the performance on that ad.
And something that Facebook usually does sometimes is they say, hey, boost this post, reach 5,000 people in your area. They actually push that notification your way. So on your side, if you're not really too familiar with digital marketing or even Facebook ads, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. For $5, I'll spend, I'll reach 5,000 people. But again, the purpose of that campaign, as I said before, is just reach. It doesn't mean that those people are going to click on your ad. It doesn't mean they're going to visit your website. It doesn't mean they're going to contact you or purchase from you. All you're literally paying for is just like eyeballs. And people then will say, hey, yeah, you know what, that Facebook advertising, I tried it a bunch of times. I clicked on that boost post and it didn't work. Therefore, Facebook ads don't work. And that's where we have to come in and be like, oh, did you use the boost post? Yeah. Okay. Well, then you did it kind of wrongly to start with, which is why it'll never work this way.
Yeah. And I will say, as the old guy, it did used to work. Back in 2010, you could boost a post and actually drive sales and drive phone calls and drive whatever your conversion goal was. It really did work. So a lot of times I'll talk to people and they're like, yeah, I used to use boost posts and it worked. And I don't know, now I'm not getting quite the same results, or Facebook stopped working. And it's because this boost post kind of lost the ability to work nowadays. So don't do it anymore. A note about Facebook Ads Manager is that it's complicated, it's slow, it's ugly, it changes all the time. Everybody hates it. I mean, except for Facebook, but like we all hate it. Everyone who does Facebook marketing hates it. It's very slow. It's a pain, but it really does offer the full range of features and campaign types and targeting and all the things you need. So you have to get comfortable with Ads Manager. You have to deal with it. It's really the only, and we're going to spend some time in Ads Manager today. So you'll get at least an intro to it if you're not very familiar with it. If you are familiar with it, hopefully we'll give you some tips. I did a little bit of a chat. Again, I recommend the Facebook Blueprint if you do want to get into like technical stuff, but I will talk about structure a little bit. I did the same thing with Google. So I want to mention, and again, probably nowadays Andres manages a lot more campaigns in Facebook than I do. But so feel free to jump in here if I'm wrong, but generally it's the same hierarchy as Google for the most part. You have campaigns, you have ad groups. I'll do it here. You have campaigns, you have ad groups, and you have ads, right? Just like in Google, there's certain things you control at the campaign level, and there's certain things you control at the ad level, at the ad group level, and then the ads are the ads that people see. So at the campaign level, I wanted to explain, this is where you control like the type and the objective and the budget, as long as you're doing like campaign level budget optimization, although you can also do ad group level campaign optimization in Facebook, right?
Yeah, you can. I usually recommend just leave it at campaign budget optimization. Same. You're able to control your budgets at the campaign level, and it's able to optimize through different ad sets, which works best, where before it was just what worked best in between ads.
And if you feel that you need to set the budget, or you want to set the budget at an ad group level, it probably means that ad group deserves its own campaign.
Right.
And then at the ad group level, you control audience and placement. So I put these two, screenshots here. I will say, like Facebook, the heart and soul of Facebook, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, is this audience, right? I mean, I don't know if you agree or disagree. Like that's really what makes Facebook different than every other platform that's ever existed, is that you can get so granular with who you're targeting. And being able to define audiences, being able to use lookalike audience, being able to use custom audiences. This is where most of the magic happens. So I don't spend a whole lot of time configuring campaigns. I do spend a lot of time going into ad groups and tweaking at the ad group level. I think we can dive into that a little bit. So yeah, I'm actually going to bring up the platform now. But actually I can show you while we're here. So audiences being like the heart. Obviously, you can create a new audience. This would be either using, custom audiences, and we'll talk about custom audiences, or setting like the interests and demographics of the new what I'm going to call a cold audience that you want to target. And then of course you may have saved audiences, because once you go through all this work, and you'll see how detailed it can be to create an audience that you're really happy with, you probably want to save that audience so you can reuse it and you can tweak it over time. So I'm gonna, what do we have here? Yeah, I'm gonna jump out of this presentation and just go here into the ads manager for a minute. Let me make sure I'm not showing. Okay, I'm just gonna go to navigate. So here's where you can see the campaign level ad set. I call it ad groups because that's what I'm used to from Google. But it's campaigns, ad sets. What do we say here? Ad sets, just so nobody, there's no record that I ever called it anything different. Campaigns, ad sets, and ads. So ads, again, is pretty self-explanatory, although they have some interesting ad variations, and we're going to talk about them. And again, the campaign level is really what I use for global budget. So here, obviously, we're using an ad set budget, which Andres says not to do. I look at this to kind of look at reporting, but I very rarely hit this edit button in a campaign, and I'll show you what options exist there. Again, a lot of these end up being like, once you set them, you cannot change them. So keep in mind, like I've done campaigns where I chose the wrong objective in the beginning, but I didn't know that it was the wrong objective until I got all the way to the end. And then I was setting up the ad, and then I realized, oh, I can't target this particular thing because I chose the wrong objective. And then you can't edit it. You have to actually go back out and create a whole new campaign, which is my favorite thing to do. But there's nothing really to edit here. It's campaign budget optimization, which in this case is off, and then these things which don't let you click on them. Special ad categories. This does become a real issue for a lot of people. If you do anything related to credit or employment or housing or social issues or weapons or anything like that, special ad categories is kind of where you fall into. It gets a little bit messy. Facebook doesn't like this stuff. If you can stay out of this, you probably should. So I don't spend a whole lot of time here. Close. Where I do spend a lot of time is at this ad set level. So I want to go through and just create, let's create a new one. So I'm going to create a new one. We're going to say we want to target what?
Traffic.
Traffic. Okay. That's my favorite.
Usually traffic is a pretty good way to start because it pushes people to visit your website, and also cost per click or cost per landing page view is like a pretty good measurement for you to know, like, okay, how much am I spending per traffic to my website? Out of 100 people that visit my website, how many of them are converting? Okay, I need to spend this amount to drive this many people to my website to get this many conversions.
Right.
So usually traffic is a good way to start it if you don't have data to use others.
Yeah. And what he's saying too relates to what we talked about last week with this ROI calculator and factoring in, okay, what's your cost per click? What's your conversion rate? What's it going to cost you to get that sale? That's what he's referring to in there. Campaign name, Bootcamp test. So we don't forget to turn this off later. The type is auction. The campaign objective is traffic.
Yeah, I don't touch any of that ever.
We don't touch any of this stuff ever.
No A/B testing.
So
we do our A/B testing on our side.
Everybody asks me about A/B testing, and everybody tries A/B testing. And even when I say don't use A/B testing, they still do A/B testing. Nobody in a professional capacity is using this unless your budget is like $20,000 a month. If your budget is $100, $500, $1,000, do not use A/B testing. And it looks like, just don't do it. Nobody ever listens to me on this, but we're just going to leave it. We'll leave it there.
And then put on campaign budget optimization.
And then we're going to turn on campaign budget optimization. You can set either daily or a lifetime budget. What do you prefer and why?
I very rarely use lifetime budget. I only use lifetime budget when I have a certain budget that I have to spend in like a week. If it's just a campaign that I'm gonna run for like a week, like we have a week-long special on some restaurant or something, and the budget's, I don't know, like $1,000, then I will do it. If it's a campaign that I'm trying to build upon, like, after a couple weeks, I'll go back to it and I'll optimize it and then I'll keep it running. I will always just leave it at daily budget.
Okay. I will say there's one scenario where I use lifetime budget. Recently learned about this restriction. On daily budget, you cannot do ad scheduling.
Yeah.
So if you if you're doing like a B2B type company and you don't want your ads running between, like outside of business hours, let's say, for example, you want to get phone calls and the people need to reach you between, 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and you want to have the ads off during all those other times, you cannot do that with a daily budget. If you set a lifetime budget, you can go in here and do ad scheduling and then choose what times those ads are going to run. So that is an important distinction. That's really the only, besides, like you said, if you only can spend $500, you put $500. Usually I always do daily budget as well. I feel it's the most flexible. It spreads out your spend more evenly. So I usually recommend daily budget unless you've got to do scheduling. And then campaign bid strategy.
Yeah, I just always leave that.
So
at lowest cost.
You never used to do a cost cap?
No.
So there's another point of differentiation. When you say lowest cost, you're pretty much telling Facebook, just spend whatever it takes to get me results. And I will do that on a benchmarking campaign or sometimes a validation campaign. But when I have data and I know, okay, I do not want to spend more than X amount on a click, I will go in here and I'll set a cost cap. And the cost cap will let you define how much you want to spend at most for a click. But again, when I'm first setting up a campaign, I usually set up with lowest cost as well, and I let it run and see what happens. Okay, now we're going to go to the ad set. So this is where we get to have a lot of fun. And there's a lot of things here to look at. There's a lot of ways you can change this and optimize it. I'm going to go over kind of the basics looking at it, and feel free to jump in with any questions. Alyssa, if anything comes in, just give us a heads up that we should answer it.
Of course.
One thing to look at here is your potential reach, right? This is when I'm doing an audience, I look at this quite heavily, not so much this broad and specific too much, but potential reach. I want to know that I've got a fixed number of people in my audience. So in this case, 230 million people probably means I'm not being specific enough.
Right.
And in which case it is, because we've got no specifications in here, right? So actually, just to go down the list, again, where do you want to drive traffic? Website, app, messenger. We do have a question. Is there a good ratio between budget and audience?
The way that I kind of look at this is, again, I'll touch into budgets. When you talk about budgets, I usually like to put 30% of my budget at the top of the funnel, and then 70% of my budget at the middle funnel. Your top of the funnel, you always want it to be as big as possible with the criteria that you're looking for, right? Usually if it's, your reach is the entire US, you want it to be millions of people. If it's just people in your town, you want it to be hundreds of thousands of people. And then when you do your retargeting audiences, you just put the 70% in there. You're not really going to be able to see how many people are in the retargeting audience because of privacy issues. You're not able to see, like exactly how many people are in your email list. You'll be able to see how many people visited your website to watch your videos, etc. But again, at the retargeting, which is, the people that have engaged with you or have some sort of familiarity with you, it's not going to be a very big campaign, but that's usually my recommendation with budgets.
Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, I think there's so much is dependent on your market. Generally before you kick off ad campaigns, it'd be good to have like your go-to market strategy filled out, which does include like your market size and things like that. And I think your market size drives the audience a little bit better than your budget driving the audience. So if you know that your audience size, according to your market research, is 1 million, then, but you create an ad on Facebook and it's 7 million, well, then you have a problem, right? Who's those other 6 million? Is your market research wrong, or is your targeting too broad? So I would use the go-to-market strategy tool, a go-to-market strategy tool, to kind of define what that market size is and have that sense, and not let your budget so much define your audience. By the way, short plug, we have a really cool go-to-market strategy tool that we're about to launch. It's not live yet, but if anybody in this group actually wants to get a preview and be like a beta tester for us, let me know. If you're interested in doing like a real go-to-market strategy thing, we've got a tool that, again, should have been ready last week, but that's my fault. Okay, so yeah, your market size determines this. We're going to skip through this. Again, if you're running an app, you could do app, but for this purpose.
So I'll say something here. I have most of my clients, I've always put kind of website on here. I do have one client in particular that we run messenger ads for, and it absolutely crushes. They are an apartment leasing company, and they are always getting questions on Messenger every single day of, what does your credit application look like? What's a requirement? What's a security deposit? Are pets allowed? And every single day, because they put their listings on the marketplace, people are always saying, hey, is this still available? Is this still available? Is this still available? So I actually set up like a messenger bot campaign for them that as soon as you message them, you begin kind of this long list of already pre-filled questions that people kind of see what they're interested in, and it answers them for them. So depending on the business that you have, obviously that will change, but there is some value on my side for the messenger campaign if you do get a lot of questions before somebody kind of buys something.
Cool. There's an option to do dynamic creatives. I'm not going to go into this too much because it's not used very often, but I have used it and I sort of like it, but it also limits your number of ads you can create. You can only if you choose dynamic creative at the ad set level, you can only create one ad. That's it. And now that one ad is dynamic and it uses all these different elements to actually, in practice, show lots of different ads. But you also lose some control of what those ads look like. Kind of like we talked about responsive ads last week on Google. This is kind of like a responsive ad on steroids. But I find it's not really used very often, and the results are kind of mixed on its effectiveness.
Yeah, like good example here would be if you're doing a story ad and you have the swipe up feature to it, this is where you would get into that.
Okay. And then an offer, if you want to have offers, again, I find most people don't use this. No, it's actually not even available because we have land. And this is what I mean, like these little features, offers not available with landing page view optimization. Sometimes the things you choose at the campaign set level restrict your options moving forward, but I wouldn't, even me, and I do this all the time, I would have had no idea that I could not run offers with a landing page view optimization.
A good example of this is like if you want to get people to call your business and you want the call to action on your website is call now, then the only objective that you can select for that is reach. So again, it's like you get the call now, that's cool. They're one click away from calling you, but you can't be very targeted with it. So those are one of the things that you'll kind of find out as you get in here and play with it yourself.
Okay, we got start date and end date. I'm not going to bother too much with that. And what I want to show here is the audience. So let's, we could either come up with like a fake product, or what's a good way to, does anybody have like a business they want to throw in the chat?
You don't want to use like a WeWork membership? Like let's say WeWork is trying to promote some memberships and they're trying to reach people like in this audience.
Okay, fine. Let's do WeWork. Look at you plug in the WeWork. We didn't have donuts today. Last time we had donuts and we had ginger beer. It was really good.
All right.
Okay, so let's say it's WeWork, right? Let's say WeWork wants to expand a particular market, right? Or they have a bunch of markets. Obviously, WeWork's huge, so they've got a bunch of markets they want to expand into, and they want to fill up some spaces. You've got targeting options here for those locations, right? So you can say, and this is pretty straightforward. Everybody offers this. We'll pick Miami. You've got the so it shows you in a little map, which is cute, right? I can see where this will reach, and I can control where it'll reach based on miles.
Yeah. So I have a little tip here. When you do a particular city, it only lets you narrow down to 10 miles. However, if you click on the drop pin and then you on the bottom right hand corner, it says drop pin, and you just drop it right next to it, that will let you narrow down to a mile.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So if you need really, how did I not know this after all this
Or
time?
you could also do it by zip code. Like if you know the zip codes, like, I don't know, if you are a school, private school that, is trying to target a particular district and you know your zip codes and stuff like that, you could go by zip code as well. But I usually do the drop pin just because it gives me super granular targeting.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I didn't know that, because we actually do run into that sometimes where,
the 10-mile radius is pretty big.
and not just that it's too big, but it hits areas you don't want. So
Yeah.
you might say, okay, I really want to have this bottom section, but I don't want to be going up here to Fort Lauderdale. And I didn't realize you could just hit this drop a pin. What do? You press it?
Yeah.
And then you click?
Well, no. You gotta press it again.
Press it?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
there you go. And you could have like multiple. I think you can't have multiple.
Wow. My mind is blown right now.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Look at that. I knew there was a reason to have you here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So you pick your locations. We're not gonna spend too much time there because I think everybody can kind of figure that out. Okay, go away locations. Oh, and then also this is kind of important. Do you want people who are living in or recently in this location? Do you want people living? Do you want people recently in the location, or people traveling? This, I don't know if we went into this on Google as well, but Google, you set your locations in Google, but it doesn't necessarily mean people living there. It might mean people who are showing interest in that area. So someone who might be living in Arkansas, but they searched for restaurant Miami, right? It would show that they have an interest in Miami. And if you have a restaurant, you're advertising on Google, your ad would be shown to them, even though they don't live in your target area.
And this is powerful. Like I used to have a client that had a store inside of a mall, and 90% of his traffic was tourists. So we would target people traveling in this location, and we got a ton of tourists because those are the only people that saw the ad. People kind of in the neighborhood weren't interested in that product.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's move on. Age. Anytime I see a campaign, and you and I differ on this, I think, because anytime I see a campaign with 18 to 65, I just think whoever's managing this is not doing their job.
I don't do 18 to 65, but I do keep it pretty broad. And then again, later on, I'll optimize and I'll kind of narrow it down, because again, Facebook's going to show you who's interested in the ad and who's not interested in the ad. And you do all the research that you want as to who your target audience is, but sometimes you might be surprised, and being surprised with positive results on Facebook is not something that I complain about.
You just said something really interesting, and it's something that I use quite a bit. So when he said, you can come up with your personas or your target audiences all you want, but Facebook's going to be better at finding. So one, you put a lot of faith into Facebook, which I think is probably good or not good, I'm not sure. But I do think you have to use this to adjust how you think about your personas and to let it mold your personas, because the data you get from here and the data that comes through in Facebook is a lot more comprehensive than you're probably conceptualizing. Or even if you have a team researching your personas, Facebook's going to be able to add to that. So I would kind of use this and adjust the personas.
So in WeWork's case, who would be kind of the age group?
Well, I would say in WeWork, probably 18-year-olds are not going to be looking for co-working space. 21-year-olds may not do that, although now they have the hot desk membership, which is kind of like a get in and move.
I'd probably start at 25.
Let's say we meet in the middle with a 22.
Okay.
And then on the high end, do you think 65-year-olds are using?
No, probably
Alyssa,
not.
are 65-year-olds using WeWork? You're on record now. Maybe you can't say. Never mind. What do you think? Let's throw a guess at it. Guys, give me suggestions.
What
do you think the top end of a WeWork?
I don't know.
I'm gonna say 55. No suggestions. Everybody's so quiet today. How many zip codes
You
can
can
you
enter
enter?
as many zip codes as you want. And then the way that you would do that, instead of you having to select them one by one, is here, go back to.
Let her figure it out. We don't have too much time.
Okay.
Effie, we can talk about it later.
Okay.
You're actually gonna meet Andres. You'll be in the office later today. So you can enter as many zip codes as you want. You have a Greek product. Target them. Yes, we'll go into that in a second. Actually, perfect. That's a perfect question because we can go into that. David, you're 50. Florentina, you're 35. you guys, let's just move it up a little bit. Let's put 58.
Okay.
Fine.
Fine.
I get really specific here, and he doesn't really care. Obviously, you can choose gender. Facebook doesn't have a non-binary option yet, I guess. Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so now here, I don't know why we spent so much time talking about everything else, because this is the only thing that really anybody should pay attention to. This is where I spend so much time.
Yeah.
Andres spends less time. So if you were going to do this in the way that you do,
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to let you.
Yeah,
let
I
you
would
type.
put like.
What would you put?
Yeah,
give me
I would
instance.
put like something like somebody that's interested in entrepreneurship. And then I would start to see kind of like what happens to my reach as I do that. And now I'm big on narrowing it down. Like you could put other things on here. Maybe you're interested in like digital marketing nomads are becoming pretty popular, right? So digital marketing, somebody's also interested in digital marketing. Yeah, something like that. And then you could put a lot of different interests kind of like at the top, or you could then start to narrow down like somebody that's interested in entrepreneurship and digital marketing, but they also must match. And I don't know, maybe here I'll put like income level top 10 to 25%, right? Because it's WeWork. So, and then you could narrow it down kind of even further, but then look at what happens to my potential reach when I do something like that. Like maybe that was a little bit too drastic because I went from 760 to like 25,000, right? So maybe they must also match.
And so just to
or
clarify,
maybe I'll just do it like this. I'll do entrepreneurship and they must also match digital marketing. So you're getting both of those, right? You're getting the people that like entrepreneurship and they also like digital marketing.
So keep in mind,
and then that's like way better.
Keep in mind that everything you put in this top box is or, right? So they're like entrepreneurship or digital marketing or this or that. And then when you add a narrow feature, then you have an and. So they have to like entrepreneurship and digital marketing. And then if you narrow further, you're adding another and. So they have to have all three of those things in your group.
Right. So even though I might only use 5 interests on my side, if all those 5 interests are like, you have to like all of these, it can get pretty narrow and it can get pretty powerful instead of just putting 5 ors. Like I don't do 5 ors because then it's just too broad. But if I really narrow down 5 things about my customer persona that I know all the way down, you're going to get a pretty good audience of.
So that's what you would do, entrepreneurship and digital
Well,
marketing.
I mean, I don't know what else, like, I don't know what the ideal WeWork member, I don't know.
Okay, all right,
yeah.
cool. So that's his, and this is why we're here. So we
Well, I
can
mean,
kind of
like, I would include a couple more. I just can't think of any right now.
Okay, so
I didn't know we were doing WeWork.
You suggested WeWork. It's your fault. Actually, we could go to Effie's question and see how we would target the Greek persona, but let's stick with WeWork because I think it's
Okay. So how would you do it
different.
on your side?
So the first thing I wouldn't do entrepreneurship. I would put co-working because I like to be super direct again on who my audience is.
Okay, and what is that size? That's just such a small size, though.
It's 30,000. Okay, but I'm still adding ands.
Okay.
I'm still adding. I'm adding ors.
Okay.
Right. So now I'm going to add. Okay, maybe also people who like WeWork. Right? Why not? I don't want. Oh, this is really, really important. There's a little gray text all the way at the end of the interest because it's not always interest. In this case, this is people who are employed by WeWork, and this is people who are interested in WeWork. So I would put people who are interested in WeWork. Right? It hasn't gone up anymore. It's still 30,000. That's fine. I might put small business owners. Okay, now we're up to 78,000. Digital activities, small business owners, additional interest, co-working and WeWork. And then I use this, suggestions. You don't use suggestions?
I do.
Then I use suggestions and I almost always add all this junk. Not all of it, but whatever's the reason. So, okay, workspace, sure. Office space, sure. Small office, home office, yeah. Startup company, go for it. Entrepreneurship, there you go. We added the entrepreneurship. I think targeting home office people because maybe they're looking to move, maybe lean startup. So I would go and end up having like all this junk, right? Everything in here, I would have like a bunch of options in the detailed targeting, right? That are all or options. And then I'll narrow the audience with a couple of things. So in this case, maybe that, what'd you put, the income?
Yeah.
Maybe an income level. I don't know if I'd say top, I would put a few of these. So say top 25 to 50%. Now look at that, has a huge impact on audience. 25, top 10. Okay, so I added so again, these are ors within this and group. So people can match anything in here and any one thing in here. So any one thing or multiple things in here and any one thing or multiple things in here. And we get to about 94,000, which I'm happy with. And I would probably add actually a lot more in here, to be honest. I would just go through and have a field day with all the features. And then he looks at my audience, he's like, why do you have so many things in here? So it's just one of the ways you can do it. And both of our groups perform well, depending on how.
Yeah, I think this is like a perfect example of testing. Just test different things to see what works better.
Detailed targeting expansions, I never turn it on.
Yeah, I never turn
this
it on.
This is giving Facebook the authority to kind of just show your ad to anybody, and I don't ever do it. I think it's junk. Languages, sometimes I'll play with this. Usually if it's English, if you've got something in English, I would just leave it alone. If you do have something that's very specific and targeted in a particular language, like for example, in Effie's scenario, you might want to target people who have Greek. It's fewer than 1,000 people, so maybe not.
Right, that's like with all the settings that we have.
With all the settings, yeah. And within like this really
Yeah.
tight locate. We're literally targeting a 10-mile radius in
Right.
Miami. So within a 10-mile radius in Miami, we're still hitting 94,000 people that fit these characteristics. I feel okay about that. I might take off entrepreneurship because that one is not my favorite. And look how big of an impact that had. It went from 90-something thousand to 37,000. If we are targeting a 10-mile radius, 37,000 is not bad. I would probably be okay with this as an initial campaign. Otherwise, I don't really worry too much about languages. Placements, I think we've talked about before, but if we haven't, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going a little bit quickly. And we'll get to play with all this in the workshop more. Placements, I never do automatic placements.
Yeah, I always do manual placements, and I usually only stick with Facebook and Instagram, and then I usually pretty much stick with just the news feed. Like,
yeah, and we have a difference of opinion there. By the way, I love that they say recommended here, and literally not a single digital marketer will recommend
the
this.
funny thing is you can actually see where your ads are being placed, whether they're inside of Facebook, inside of Instagram, or the audience network. And when you click on automatic, very rarely do they show ads inside of Instagram, Facebook. They show it to these other sites that you have no idea where they are.
Yeah, and the performance is usually very bad.
Yeah.
There's also a tiny hidden feature that I actually noticed a lot of digital marketing companies don't even know exists. It's a conversation I have pretty often. So if you choose automatic placement, it's going to show your stuff everywhere. You choose manual placements, right? You're going to start choosing Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and you kind of skip down. And everybody misses this little thing here on devices, but it's really powerful because this is where you can choose if you want it to show on mobile and desktop. And if you're being really granular about optimization, being able to run a mobile campaign specifically and a desktop campaign specifically can really change the way that optimization works. I'm not saying it's something you do all the time. I'm not saying it's something you do on a first campaign, but I bring it up because the way they have it, now that I clicked on it, it'll keep showing like that. But otherwise, everybody misses that tiny little word devices with a little word that says all, and they don't know how to restrict it from mobile because unfortunately, or whatever, fortunately or unfortunately, mobile users do behave differently than desktop users. And sometimes your mobile traffic is really bad and you've got to turn it off. As Andres was saying, we both agree to turn off audience network almost 100%. For me, it's 100% of the time.
Yeah, I never use
100% of the time, audience network off. Messenger, I guess you have a campaign that you use it for?
No. Well, I mean, no, Messenger, what that means is the ad will show up in Messenger. It's not the objective. So I don't use that either.
Okay, so you don't use this. I don't use this either.
Yeah.
So we both use Facebook and Instagram. Now, I choose these two options and I leave all of the rest of this alone. You actually get picky.
Yeah, I don't like like in stream, whenever an ad shows up in stream, the moment you have the opportunity to leave the ad, people usually do that. Search, yeah, I don't like that. I think when you got to think of, like, the way that I think about it is where people spend the most amount of time is on their phone and on the news feed, right? When you're looking at Facebook on your desktop, you're not really looking at the ads that are in the right column or any of that stuff. So I usually stick to that. That's where you have the most amount of real estate.
So what do you
And
do? Newsfeed?
Yeah, I just leave newsfeed, Instagram newsfeed, and then I also leave stories. Stories have performed well for me, but everything else I turn off.
Yeah, I leave out all this stuff. I find that if you restrict it to the news feed and the Instagram feed only, your cost per click is higher.
Yeah, but it's a better impression
And,
on my side. Yeah.
It is. I'm not going to disagree that it's a better
impression.
impression, but I don't think the cost per click trade-off is worth it. But anyway, again, it goes to show you, like, play with it. There's so much here to learn from and try and kind of like actually understand what these things mean, right?
And it's cool that, like, it shows you that on the right side what it looks like, so you can kind of see what your ad would appear like on the other side.
Yeah. So there's and then here also you can implement the cost control.
Yeah, and then here's where you decide whether you want to pay for landing page views or link clicks or impressions. Right there, where it says landing page views.
Yeah. So lowest cost bid strategy doesn't. This is where that setting earlier, where we said, okay, he said he always chooses lowest cost. I said I like to choose cost cap. Cost cap would have let you edit this to say I don't want to pay anything more than 75 cents a click.
Yeah.
But we don't have that option because we chose a different thing. And this is where I think Sarah asked the question, landing page views versus link clicks versus
and landing page views only works if you have the Facebook pixel installed where you're sending traffic. Otherwise, you won't be able to click it. What landing page views means is somebody went on your website and they waited for the site to load. Link clicks literally means somebody clicked on that link and then they could have just like left right away. It'll still count as a link click. So landing page views is a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, awesome. There's so much to cover in Facebook. There's just so many options. I definitely, if you really want to start doing this, I recommend one, just poke, the way I learn is just by poking around and testing all the different options, and then just pause it. Like if we created this campaign, but it doesn't mean it has to run, right? As long as you don't publish it, it's not going to run.
Yeah,
it's just going to sit there.
As a draft.
And just for good measure, I'd probably just like turn it off, using this option. Make sure you turn off at the campaign level, not like you might have multiple ad sets. You turn off one ad set, but other ad sets are still running. Obviously, we can talk about a lot of stuff. So are the interests based on what people follow, like, add to their personal Facebook profile?
Yeah, it's everything. It's not just what they like, it's what they watch, it's what pictures they click on. They may not necessarily like particular groups. It's just like everything that they do while they're on Facebook. Facebook's gathering that data, and that's how they come up with those interests. Yeah.
I know you guys got to go. Thanks so much for hanging out.